Now let's talk about the dark truth about antidepressants. This is something I've had on my heart for so long, and I think it's just so many things that are wrong about the antidepressant industry. It's just terrible. First of all, antidepressants do not outperform placebos. It has been proven not to significantly outperform placebos. Now, what does that mean? It means if you give someone an SSRI, you give them Prozac, okay? You say, okay, you take that, you're gonna feel better. And a second person, you tell them the exact same thing. You're giving them Prozac, but actually giving them a sugar pill, and you tell them, this is Prozac, take it, you'll feel better. What I'm saying is that the sugar pill will do the exact same thing or similar to the exact same thing as actually taking Prozac. Now that's absolutely insane. Now you're taking the risk of altering your brain chemistry for the medium to long term because you need to take them for a few weeks to a few months to see the effects. You risk altering the chemical balance in your brain to maybe outperform a placebo. I think this is completely insane, and I think that for the majority of the part, I don't think this is the right approach. Now, if you have other mental illnesses, for example, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, even anxiety maybe, okay, this is a different kind of worms that I'm not going to get into, and yes, probably medication for that can probably help way more. But in terms of depression, it's a different story. It's just a different kind of worm. So while some people do amazingly well on antidepressants, some people it helps them, it's not always the case for everyone. And also let's take into consideration many side effects that some of the SSRIs or SNRIs have on the brain. And some people have even reported feeling worse, even more depressed after taking medication. Even some people who became even more suicidal. So me, for example, I started taking fluoxetine or Prozac, if you want the brand name for it. I just took it, I took it once actually. And how I felt at the beginning, I felt about 10% better for the beginning of the day, whether that was placebo or actual improvement, I'm not exactly sure. And then at the evening, near the evening, maybe the medication had worn off by then, I felt terrible. I felt like some of the worst existential depression I felt in so long. And it was just so weird for me. Maybe my body doesn't react well to these chemicals. But then after this experience, I just felt so terrible. I didn't even want to go through the 2 to 3 weeks of loading protocol that my doctor told me. So I just stopped using it. And I tried other things and other methods that have worked better for me. So that's just my story, but of course it's different for everyone. The other issue with medication is that when taken a bit far, it can lead to polypharmacy, meaning that you might have certain side effects for specific medication, and then your doctor will give you another medication to offset the side effects of medication number 1. And then maybe medication number 2 gives you some other side effects. You have to do protocol number 3 in order to deal with these side effects. So you can see how that can become a slippery slope. All of these side effects, all of these issues that antidepressants don't outperform placebos and all that, those are very well hidden by the pharmaceutical industry, right? And it's just crazy. And they also make a lot of money from these medications. That's a bit suspicious. Why would you keep promoting a drug that barely outperform placebos or not at all? Why would you keep doing that unless you had a lot of benefits, whether it be monetarily or whatever, in terms of promoting that thing? So it's something to think about. Now let's look at the issues with the serotonin hypothesis. So what is the serotonin hypothesis? Serotonin hypothesis in psychology and pharmacology and all that is the theory that the reason why you're depressed is because your serotonin are out of whack, that are out of balance. Now, what does serotonin do? Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that is responsible for this sort of feeling of calm, peace, and just being, relaxed and in a good mood. Basically, that's what they say. The purpose of SSRIs or serotonin reuptake inhibitors is to increase the capacity, they increase the quantity of serotonin in your brain by blocking certain receptors. Therefore, the hypothesis is that that will help your mood, right? And SNRIs, which are serotonin, norepinephrine, I'm not exactly sure about the terminology here, that also touches upon the norepinephrine pathway, but the mechanisms are very similar. So let's just sort of put them together for the sake of simplicity and explanation. The hypothesis is that serotonin is the main neurotransmitter that is responsible for happiness, but there are many other neurotransmitters that help with happiness. For example, oxytocin, which also some people say it's the neurotransmitter of love, affection that you feel when you're in a romantic relationship, or when women are breastfeeding, for example, you get a lot of that released. Also dopamine, responsible for motivation and taking action and making a difference in your life. Also, there's adrenaline, there's GABA, which is released when in deep states of meditation, when you drink green tea, for example, responsible for this feeling of calm and sort of regulating everything in your system in terms of anxiety and all that and negative thoughts. So why would you only zoom in on serotonin while there's so many other neurotransmitters that are responsible for happiness and well-being? To me, it makes no sense. And now I want to go really physical and philosophical and metaphysical here, because what is depression? What are we trying to do when we're trying to give these medications? We're trying to solve depression and to give happiness. Now, what is happiness? You can't. The issue with the scientific paradigm is that you're trying to solve the issue of giving happiness, which is the opposite of depression. And to discover what the happiness is, you can't answer it only scientifically. To touch upon the metaphysical realms, the philosophical realms, is inevitable. So for that reason, you have to also look at what is happiness? What does it mean for that particular individual? Maybe happiness for that person means to be productive. Then you might look at more dopaminergic pathways and look at how to increase dopamine. Maybe for someone, happiness means to be very calm, very sort of in this meditative state. So then you might look into more meditation, or sort of the GABA pathways, for example. Maybe this person needs more love, so then you need that's happiness for them. So then you need to put them out there in a sort of social setting. So you see how the serotonin hypothesis fails when it comes to solving the issue, right? Does that make sense? The serotonin hypothesis is reductionistic in nature. It's material reductionism, where you take a big idea of how to deal with depression and you reduce it to only the material biological means, where depression is much more than biological, in my opinion. It's also psychological, spiritual, and so forth. And this leads me to the black box theory, that we believe that basically in psychology, there's this sort of implicit, agreed upon idea that the mind is a black box. Meaning, the black box meaning we don't know what the hell is in that box. We just know that there are certain inputs and then certain outputs that come out from that system. I'll get more into black box theory later in this video, but just to sort of give you an overview. Now, how do I think that antidepressants should be prescribed? Now, huge disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. What I'm saying is purely experimental, so I could be wrong in every single facet. So don't take this, literally take this with a grain of salt. But in my opinion, if we were to describe any sort of, medication and all that, I think it should address the specific pathways that the client wants to improve. So you'd use psychotherapy to sort of assess what the client needs in their life. If they need more energy, they need more productivity, and that's the reason why they're depressed, then you give them some sort of dopaminergic. For example, modafinil, which has been proven to really help with depression, which is a recent studies. You can look it up online. I don't have the study in front of me. So that's just an example. If the root cause of their unhappiness and depression is because of anxiety and worry, then you look into maybe the anxiolytics. What is helping with their anxiety and stabilizing their mood and their cortisol levels, and then you'll see more results in that way. So I think the approach needs to be more surgical and specific, and not just give you an antidepressant after 5 minutes of diagnosis, which I've had with my doctor, but really dive in deep and see what is at the root cause, and specifically target the neural pathways that would help in that specific client scenario. And I think the client should be, have the agency and the self-determination to choose what kind of medication they want to put into their body. And, as they go through this process, be able to adjust and try different medications or supplements, for example. That's my opinion.